Hi guys, this is gsn.com and I'm here with the Xiaomi 12T Pro for a full review. Finally we have it. It has a 200 megapixel camera and it's the second phone who can brag about that after the Motorola Edge 30 Ultra. It's also Xiaomi's first phone with such a sensor and it's an interesting combo of high mid-range and flagship specs. It's got a Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 CPU and at the same time two other rather modest sensors to accompany the main powerful one. It was just unveiled and it's supposed to be Xiaomi's second flagship this year, following the Xiaomi 12 Pro, and maybe you can also consider the Xiaomi 12 Ultra, even though that one is limited to just parts of the world. So either second or third flagship. Anyway, let's get things going and talk about the design. So we have a blue phone here, we have the blue hue, which is pretty eye-catching and keeps the serious approach of the Xiaomi 12 Pro camera-wise. I'm talking about this split of the camera area. It looks a bit like a domino piece and it's a bit more protruding than the Motorola Edge 30 Ultra. I'm going to keep comparing these two because they're the only ones with 200 megapixel cameras. This is glass at the back side. We have here a frame which I suppose is more plastic rather than metal, and at the front side we have a flat screen with a protection applied from the factory, a plastic one, and I would say with thicker than usual bezels for a wannabe flagship. It handles pretty nicely on account of the curved edges at the back side, but it's a bit massive for my taste. It's just above 200 grams, but it's also top heavy. This part is definitely the heaviest of the device. It's resilient to splashes and the random dirt. It doesn't draw fingerprints the back side, and the grip is quite okay in my view. Now the punch hole at the front isn't that big and it's a quite well built phone. Colors here include blue, black, silver, and this is the blue hue we have. It's, I would say, a school uniform blue or blue sky after the rain. Now, as far as the screen is concerned, this one is obviously an AMOLED. It's a 6.67 inch panel, I would say pretty generic diagonal nowadays, with an interesting resolution. Nowadays we're going to see more often the 1220p resolution. Basically you're somewhere between Full HD and 2K. 120 Hz refresh rate, and Xiaomi brags about 68 billion colors, unlike the usual 1 billion colors they used to brag about. It also has an adaptive refresh rate going down to 30 Hz. There's HDR and there's also Dolby Vision, and an interesting mechanism which, as you can see, makes the screen brighter when you try to play a video. And let's see how immersive this is. By the way, aside from making the screen brighter automatically, you also get this special video toolbox which helps you upscale, do some tweaking for the sound and image. Now what you're seeing here is a very crisp image, also very bright. It's a quality AMOLED panel for sure, with wide view angles and excellent contrast in the sunlight as it still fights away the cold of the autumn and keeps some of the heat of the summer. So excellent panel all around, which was confirmed by my tests. This screen has pentametric pixels and achieved an impressive result of 714 lux units. It's 13 placed here. It goes above the iPhone 14 Pro and the Vivo X80 Pro, but stays below the Galaxy S22 Plus and S22 Ultra, as well as the Huawei P50 Pro. As usual for the folks of Xiaomi, they're providing us with a lot of settings for the screen, and I'm just going to show you a few of them. Now if you go here you see generic stuff, but if you go to the color scheme there's a lot to play with. Vivid, saturated, original, advanced, and if you go to advanced things get quite crazy. Original, P3, sRGB, color space again, hue, saturation, value, contrast, gamma, so you should better keep it vivid as it's suggested here. We also have AI image engine with a few sub options, so audio files, or rather said video files, have quite a few options to play with. Here we only treat it to 60 or 120 Hz, and actually remember that the predecessors of this device had 144 Hz, but Xiaomi decided against it this time around, probably to save some battery. If you go further to the CPU, we're going to see a familiar face which keeps appearing these days, Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1. A minor improvement from the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1, 10% in performance, but 30% less power usage, or better said, better power management. Xiaomi is being pretty skimpy on the RAM because we also have an 8 gig version. However, here we have the 12 gig version with 256 gigabytes of storage. It's LPDDR5 RAM and UFS 3.1. That's the storage we're getting here. And I would say that I'm pretty happy with the way the device is cooled in games, and also the fact it maintains its cool even in benchmarks. It doesn't overheat and runs everything like a champ. As far as benchmarks are concerned, we can also show you those. So if I go here and I go to Antutu 9, you can see we have for the 6th spot, we went above 1 million points, which is all that matters. It goes above the Vivo X80 Pro, and the Xiaomi 12 Pro stays below the Motorola Edge 30 Ultra, the arch nemesis, and below the Zenfone 9. As far as the Geekbench 5 test multi-core, here we are with 4,439 points, 4th place above the Motorola Edge 30 Ultra and the Zenfone 9, but below the iPhones from the past year, 13th generation Pro and 14th generation Pro. In gaming, we have this test where it's placed on the 1st spot, so definitely a worthy opponent even for the Asus ROG Phone 6D with that brand new CPU. As I mentioned before, we did some temperature tests. Here we achieved 38.5 degrees Celsius in benchmarks, which is actually not bad, and in games I didn't feel any heat on the surface of the phone. When we're talking about battery, Xiaomi is usually pretty generous, and as you can see here we have a 5000 mAh, and guess what? The device charges at 120 watts with hypercharge technology, but you'd better be assured that you're activating all the cool options from the settings, because there are quite a few. Okay, so now we did a bunch of battery tests, and I'm going to start with the video playback one. 16 hours and 18 minutes. It would be fine if there hadn't been other phones which went above 22 or even 25 hours. I mean, it's okay, but it only beats phones like the Galaxy S21 Fan Edition, Xiaomi 12 Pro. I would say there are, exaggerating a bit, 10 flagships from this year which can beat this phone in video playback, which is pretty worrying. It's below Motorola Edge 30 Ultra, Galaxy S22 Ultra by 4 minutes to be honest, and below the Vivo X80 Pro. Continuous usage is looking better with 14 hours and 4 minutes. It's actually quite good. It's above the Vivo X80 Pro, Galaxy S22 Ultra and the Xiaomi 12 Pro. The Motorola Edge 30 Ultra is a bit higher with something like 1 hour and a half, and Sony Xperia 5 Mark IV is also higher. But check this out, after just 5 minutes of charging you're at 90%, 19, and after only 24 minutes you're all juiced up and ready to go. 15 minutes means, let's see here, 68%, which is actually not bad at all. Now, when it comes to acoustics, the device graces us with stereo speakers. There's one here at the bottom and one on the top side, an approach that Xiaomi has been taking ever since the Xiaomi Mi 10. Okay, so this is a setup with Harman Kardon technology. It's written here at the top side, Harman Kardon tuned, and Dolby Atmos. Now I think it's time to listen to some tunes. Okay, a bunch of impressions. I know that the music and the acoustic sample we used doesn't blow your minds, but I have to admit that the games were pretty high volume. I actually bother my neighbors and they start pounding on the wall. Anyway, the speakers are modest in volume in music, but in games they're satisfying. Keep that in mind. The stereo setup is, I would say, decent, but the bottom speaker is a bit more powerful. Not much bass here. I would say there is some bass, but it doesn't break any records. And you can see here what we achieved decibel wise. The guitar shredding is heard fine, the voices are also satisfying, so overall not a bad experience. When it comes to the acoustic sample test, we achieved 78.5 decibels at the top, pretty underwhelming, and 84.5 at the bottom, which is a bit more decent. Now, having said that, with this value here, we went above Motorola Edge 30 Ultra and Vivo X80 Pro, as well as the Galaxy S22 Ultra, but we're below the Xiaomi 12 and the Galaxy S21 Ultra. In games, it looks like a modest result. It's one of those cases where my ear actually perceived it higher, 94.4 decibels. It's above the Galaxy Note 20 Ultra and the Xiaomi Mi 11 Ultra, but it's below the Vivo X80 Pro and hundreds of other phones, including the Galaxy S22 Ultra and the Motorola Edge 30 Ultra. As far as the cameras are concerned, we have a punch hole here for the selfie camera. It hides a 20 megapixel shooter. And at the back side, the big kahuna, the 200 megapixel main sensor Samsung ISOCELL HP1. Optical image stabilization, phase detection autofocus, and f1.69 aperture. Here we have the ultra wide 8 megapixel camera, and here we have the 2 megapixel macro camera, which feel like a pretty modest set of companions for such a big sensor. 8K video, as well as the ability to take 50 megapixel shots with the main camera, 12.5 megapixel shots by combining 16 pixels in one, and the big 200 megapixel shots. There are 200 million pixels and you can take a photo which may occupy even 80 megabytes of space on your device. We have an 8p lens, we have eye focus and pro focus which follows the subject, and a 2x zoom which is cut from the camera from the 200 megapixel shot like a sort of crop. Now, as far as the gallery is concerned, to be honest, I think I actually overdid it this time because we have 509 photos. I attended 2 concerts. One of them is a pretty big band, 3 Days Grace, and the other one is a gothic metal band. It's called Draconian. Anyway, as you can see, quite a few shots. Let's take them one at a time. So these have been shots taken during the day. This is a cloudier area, and I have to say that the behavior is not very far from what we've seen on the Xiaomi 12 Pro. Now, the fact that we're achieving a decent level of zoom even without a telephoto camera, that's pretty impressive, but usually up to something like 2x or 3x. This is actually a portrait shot where the background is a bit blurred to achieve a more dramatic effect. Okay, so regular shot, ultra wide shot, the colors don't change very much, and this may be an 8 megapixel camera, but among the 8 megapixel usually weak ultra wide cameras, this is one of the better ones. That's the good news. There is some extra saturation here and there, but I've seen worse on other phones. And check it out, this is a 200 megapixel shot, and the details here are truly amazing. As you can see, they take a while to load, and on the PC, some of my friends who saw these shots have said that their PCs were lagging a bit when trying to open the photos. Once again, 60 megabytes, 80 megabytes shots, not very easy to open with the basic apps. Excellent texture here. To be honest, this is a camera that behaves well. You'll be hard pressed to find differences compared to the Xiaomi 12 Pro or the Motorola H30 Ultra. These colorful fellows, some would say that they're oversaturated, the saturation is too much, too intense, but some people actually like it. We also have a bunch of selfies. It's hard to tell if they're better than the Xiaomi 12 series. I would say they're on par, if not a bit better. I remember complaining that the Xiaomi 12X or 12 had a bit of extra contrast and a too warm face for my taste, but this is actually a pretty good selfie camera and has a good separation in the bokeh shot, separation from the background. Here I started messing about with the zoom, try to see what a 200 megapixel camera can do without a telephoto, and I have to say I'm pretty impressed by what the cropping can bring. Okay, so let's go back here. The disappointment remains the macro camera, which is by no means a worthy companion. I would have preferred to take my ultra wide camera shots with autofocus and create macro like that. Several more close-ups, attention close-ups, not macros, are achieved here. They're quite good, but the colors may be a bit off. Once again, extra saturation, not a huge amount, but it's there. The colors of the fall are creeping in, as you can see here for yourself. These are some macros which are actually fine, but if you're working with 2 megapixels when I have 200 megapixels, it feels like you shouldn't do it. Okay, and of course I left the best for last. You can see here a bunch of peacocks, and I actually have one photo saved here. This is the biggest one I took, believe it or not, almost 90 megabytes, but you can zoom in as much as you please. And the level of detail is impressive. You have this map here to help you zoom better in this huge shot. Okay, so that's about it. Overall, people are probably wondering if this is better than the Motorola H30 Ultra. I mean, the main cameras are pretty much on par, but this one suffers in comparison with the ultra wide, that's for sure. While its 8 megapixel ultra wide camera is better than other 8 megapixel ultra wide cameras, the one from the Motorola is better. Now, this has been daytime shots. Let's see the nighttime ones. I've taken some stunning photos during the concert, but they required several attempts to actually get it right. This is concert number 2 actually, because in concert number 1 we also have some regular nighttime shots. They're pretty well lit, but I feel that Xiaomi is using a trick here. Even when you're taking shots without a special night mode, it pre-applies a night mode without asking you or telling you, so you'll never get a dark shot, that's for sure. The lights are a bit exaggerated at times, they're a bit amplified for my taste, but the colors are pretty fine. This is supposed to be without the night mode, this is supposed to be with the night mode, bringing a bit more natural colors. And this is the ultra wide, which by the way also supports night mode, which I think is a good piece of news. Here I love the way these colors have been rendered. This is a bit darker and warmer on account of the ultra wide. In general, this truly behaves like somewhere between a high mid-range phone and a true flagship. And one of these is supposed to be a 200 megapixel shot with a lot of details. Okay, the most representative for the night mode is this one. A regular shot, darker and noisier ultra wide shot, and finally night mode, which makes the clouds on the sky very well seen even though it's night time at around something like let's see here, I think it was, yes, 8 p.m. in September, means it's pretty dark outside. And actually, like the photos better at the first concert, it handles the light sources pretty well. One mention here, if you're going to a concert and using this phone, you'd want to stay pretty close because the zoom may be good during the day, but during the night time you're going to lose some details. So overall, it's something like, let's say 10% below Xiaomi 12 Pro, but still hanging in there, relevant when it comes to nighttime capture. Now let's talk about the videos. Okay, now let's talk about the videos. So we have this player here and no less than 29 clips. As I said before, we went to concerts and we have quite a few videos of the sort. Okay, so let's start with a bit of panning here. There is a lot of saturation on the green vegetation here, a lot of details and nice stabilization when panning. Usually that's not a problem for flagships and neither is it here. The saturation is a bit more intense than the photos, and here we also have some colors in case you're wondering. Intense reds, but some beautiful blues and a very fluid and gentle way of zooming, although the noise appears quite fast after 2x. This is the selfie video, which to be honest is a bit underwhelming. We're just having full HD here, 60 frames per second. A bit noisier than expected in the background. There's a bit of a contrast between the face and the background, and the stabilization not the best in the world, so not a very impressive selfie video. Okay, we also attempted some of the cool modes. We have the dual video here. We have slow motion, of course. It goes past 960 frames per second, something like almost 2000 frames per second, which is pretty impressive. We have a stabilization test here. 4K 30 frames per second without the steady mode. And believe it or not, I actually prefer this one versus the steady mode. You can see there's a bit of motion here and there, but nothing serious. The stabilization is quite solid. But then we have the second video where the stabilization steady mode is on, and I'm actually not that impressed because you can feel the motion and trepidation, and I actually prefer the previous clip because it's also in 4K. When you're doing steady, you're limited to full HD. And this is the focus test, alternating between this little nugget and the background in a pretty precise and fast manner. We have a lot of other clips, including some peacocks moving around. Beautiful colors, nice lighting, and in the shade you'll get rid of that saturation I mentioned before. Okay, so let's say we're about on par with the Xiaomi 12 series. So if you like the way they filmed, you'll also enjoy this one. I have some concert videos here as well. Those were daytime, this is the nighttime. Hopefully we won't get any copyright strike. The videos are satisfying in quality, and the microphones handled this heavy metal quite well. We had a lot of growls, a lot of solos. They captured everything fine. There was a flute in there, there was a violin. It can take it quite well, the live shows. Sadly, when you zoom in, you won't be that impressed because the details will fade out quickly. You can see that here. I was quite far from the stage, and while it may look fine on this small screen, on the big screen, believe me, not that impressive. Another angle from here. I mean, you get a lot of joy from these details, and the microphones are spot on and the zoom is gentle, but telephoto camera enabled handsets will handle it better, and I think an iPhone or Galaxy S22 Ultra is overall better for concerts. But for what it is, a wannabe flagship, I think it did its job admirably when it comes to the nighttime shots. And this is a regular nighttime shot, not a concert one. There are some light aberrations here, some weird reflection and expanding light sources like a bug, but aside from that I'm happy with the details, the clarity and the colors. I think we're about done with the camera, and I think it's time to discuss connectivity. It's a dual SIM 4 with nano SIM card slots. We have 5G and Wi-Fi 6E, USB-C 2.0 at the bottom side, infrared at the top side here, Bluetooth 5.3, GPS, GLONASS, Galileo, BDS, QZSS and Navic, and the calls were loud and clear in my book. Now, when it comes to the speed test, you can see the results here. In 5G, we achieved 805 megapsecond in download, which is quite stunning, and 58.2 megapsecond in upload. On Wi-Fi, it was actually lower, 609 over 846. So there you have it. Now the software is the exact same you saw on the Xiaomi 12 Pro, 12 and 12X and also 12S Ultra. It's MIUI 13 on top of Android 12. Nothing changes. You can see here the news feed. You got the recent area with 2 columns and some cleaning up settings. You can pinch the screen for widgets. These haven't evolved. We're expecting them to look more beautiful in the next iteration of MIUI. From here you can drag down the quick settings area. It's an iOS imitation, and from here you have the notifications. Okay, for security you see me wielding this fingerprint scanner embedded in the screen. It's an optical variety. And aside from that, I would say things are pretty straightforward with all the options you've come to know. Always on display included, notifications, password and security, privacy protection, which includes a special permissions area, privacy policy and more. We have one-hand usage, we have digital well-being, we have gesture shortcuts, one-handed mode, special features like heart rate. You can read your heart rate using the fingerprint scanner from here, which I've seen on quite a few phones recently, including Realme handsets, Xiaomi handsets, and a few more. Okay, so overall not bad, 83. Not sure how accurate this is. And quite a few pre-installed apps, to be honest, the most useful of them being security, which is basically your hub for the nice functioning of the phone. You got your security scan, boost speed, deep clean, and as you can see, even a Facebook cleaner, block list, game turbo, and privacy area. I think this is pretty much it. Of course, you also have an app drawer with categories here, entertainment, photography, tools, news, and so much more. And I think it's time to address the verdict of the phone, and let's also enter our website. Okay, so pros and cons. On the pro side, it's a comfy phone for how big it is. It has a very bright screen, one of the brightest Xiaomi phone screens, powerful CPU inside and no overheating, fast charge, good battery life, good speakers, in games at least, and pleasant colors for the main camera if you like a bit of saturation. Nice selfies overall, quality ones, detailed videos, solid microphone for concerts, fast connectivity, and okay zoom and details when cropping. The 200 megapixel camera is definitely an evolution if you're into details. On the cons side, it's still a bit heavy, especially top heavy. We also have a version with 8 gigs of RAM, which feels like too little nowadays. The bass is so-so for the speakers. The steady mode is actually worse when stabilizing when filming. The low light capture cheats a bit by pre-applying the night mode. And I should also mention that the macro was underwhelming, and the ultra-wide camera, even though it's quite good compared to other 8 megapixel ultra-wide cameras, is still no match for the 50 megapixel ultra-wide cameras. I would also have to say that the selfie video was also underwhelming. Now, in the end, people are going to ask me, can this phone fight the Motorola Edge 30 Ultra? They can fight each other in the screen department, battery department, the charging department, although this one charges faster. I think it's actually a pretty close duel. Let's actually see that here. Battery, charge, okay. Yeah, it's actually 3 minutes better for the Motorola. It's a very tight fight. That's what I'm going to say. The Motorola has as an advantage the ultra-wide camera, which is a bit better, the macros are a bit better, and the battery, I think it's a bit superior. So People may also prefer the fact that the Motorola has a cleaner interface and this is customized. But in the end, if you're only about the camera, you'll be pretty impressed by how this device can film. I think in filming and in cropping, it feels a bit superior to what Motorola can do. And also that special focus feature which follows people around is pretty interesting, I would say. It feels like a landscape phone, people who do landscapes. That's the vibe I'm getting. And the fast charge means you're always on the go and you don't have time to waste. So you're going to charge the phone quite fast. And performance, of course, will be lag free for at least 3 years. Hopefully gets Android 13 fast. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Be prepared for the future. 87 megabytes of space for a single photo, 200 megapixels. That's about it. Remember, this one fights the Motorola Edge 30 Ultra. It may be cheaper in some countries, but at the same time, not as much as of a battery life and not as good as a ultra-wide camera. That's it from us. Goodbye.